Big welcome to all of you. Good morning if you're tuning in from the Americas. Good afternoon if you're tuning in from Africa or from Europe. And good evening if you're staying up late and you're tuning in from Asia to watch our wonderful event that we have on this afternoon. The importance of networking. So why do people pick, a master's course? Now, obviously the learnings that you're going to take from this course are going to help you and advance you in your career. That's the main reason why any of us take any course of study. But what about the opportunities that a university can provide you to network with others? And what about your organization? Are you as well networked within your organization as you'd like to be? We have a wonderful guest today, Paula Singer, and she's the Chief Network Officer of Laureate Universities, and she's here today to help us understand why networking is important and whether who you know is really as important as what you know. So I'll welcome our guest today. Hello, Paula. How are you?
How are you doing, Doug? Good to be here.
Thank you very much. Now let's crack on. Let's crack on with the event itself. Our students might not know you. You represent Laureate Universities, which is a massive organisation with the world's largest public benefit company. But many of our students might not really know about Laureate, so we just want to give them a bit of context about what we do. And your position of Chief Network Officer. Now everyone knows what a CFO does, or a CMO, or a CEO. But what does a CNO do? And that's something we'll look to find out today. Our first question for you is, who are Laureate Education and Laureate partners? Now, for our audience today, we give Paula a set of questions, and Paula has returned her answers to us, and we're going to look and elaborate on those answers. You'll find there's a handout available for you where Paula shares her 6 top tips for networking, and we'll be exploring those a bit deeper in the webinar. You'll also notice to the left of your screen there'll be a box saying Ask Any Question. That's a very important box for this session because students and prospective students alike who are looking at our programs are both in this session. You get to interact, you get to ask us any questions that you like that you're when you're listening to the webinar. Please listen attentively, and if you have a question, please put it in the box, and we will look to answer those questions in a Q&A session that we have in about 30 minutes time after we've gone through some of these questions. So without any further ado, let's go into our question, and the first question for you, Paula, is who are Laureate Education and Laureate partners?
Well, Laureate Education is a very unique organization. It is an organization that has over 70 universities around the world, and each of those institutions have their own brands and their own focus. They're very unique, and they represent a couple of different groups. Undergraduate programs, particularly in developing countries, where access, this is one of our biggest mission statements and the purpose of really our public benefits positioning of being able to have access and make access much more available and affordable. So at the undergraduate level, at the master's level, where most of your students are now listening from, and also we have universities that are actually fully owned by Laureate Education and those that are partners that allow us to extend and work with some of the best universities around the world and bring them into our network of institutions. And again, Roehampton is one of those, are part of that partners group.
Perfect. Yeah, so we affiliate to run the online programs for certain universities, but we also do campus-based brick and mortar, as we call it, universities. Now, you have an extremely interesting role, and that's the reason why we've invited you here today, Paula, because, networking is not only something you know about, but it's actually in your job title. So can you explain, your role as Laureate's Chief Network Officer and, the Laureate Network?
Be happy to. One thing I should tell you is that when you have a brand new title like Chief Network Officer, sometimes people get so I often get lots of information that should go to a Chief Information Officer. They think I'm in charge of technology. But the network I'm in charge of is the network of people. It's a network of institutions. And really, my role and the role of my team, because we never do anything by ourselves, it's always with an expert team that you succeed, is about making connections. It's about being sure that our institutions, I can help facilitate the best practices from institution to institution to help institutions that are in need connect with schools and organizations within Laureate that are solving the same problem so that they can have speed to solution and a lot of innovative ideas than they would have if they were standing alone. So bringing the network of institutions together for the benefit of those institutions and mostly for our students.
Well, so quite an undertaking. The scope of this project being extremely huge. We have 1 million students and many institutions. How long is this project going to take, or is it just constantly ongoing?
Well, we see this as ongoing. This has been in our minds as one of the most important reasons to be part of Laureate, was this network concept, this global association. We believe at Laureate that our students are going to be better prepared and be more of a first choice for employers if they have a global experience. And so in the first years of Laureate, we did spend more time on our individual institutions, helping them be the best they could be. Now we're in the phase of our organization where we want to make those connections strong so that our students will have a more global opportunity, and in a way that doesn't actually always require them to go and spend months and months in a different country. So we see this as an ongoing piece of our work and a permanent strategic department within the organization.
Perfect. So this is a big project, Chief Network Officer. It's an ongoing project. It's going to involve a lot of work and a lot of networking, and you must meet a lot of people in your line of work, Paula. And so what we've done is we want to look at, some of the skills, tips, and tricks that you can offer us to improve our networks and how we can make more of an effort as well. And as you were touching upon earlier, we want our students to be successful and have career opportunities. And part of that is really networking and understanding how to show off what you've learned at the University of Roehampton online. And we're going to look at that as well. So our first question to get into networking is, in business, Paula, is who you know as important as what you know? And you provided us this wonderful quote here, in business, who you know is as important as what you know. And this is what I found interesting, mostly because who you know actually helps inform what you know. So the people around you are going to make you stronger by filling in those knowledge gaps. Now, can you recall, Paula, in your vast experience and career, can you recall a contact in business that might have made a considerable impression on you, maybe in your early career?
Absolutely. I'm thinking of my early career where I moved from a small company to a large corporation, a global company. I did not have experience in that, very different setting. And I had the opportunity to meet, because the person was on the due diligence team for our organization, the head of sales, really big personality, and there was no reason for him to take too much interest in this young person who was in front of him, but he was a genuinely kind and good person, and I took full advantage of learning what I could from him. What did I learn the most? Well, first of all, I learned that it was great that I had made that contact, because 5 years later he became my boss.
Wow.
Nice to have that relationship already. But he gave me something that I took with me the rest of my life, and I did not learn this in school. I learned it from him, to express it explicitly, and that was about attitude. And he was fond of always saying, it is your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. Wow. And that really made a big impact on me. You cannot always control in fact, you can't control most of what goes on around you. What you can control is how you react to it, the way you model positive attitude, and those attitudes, as we all know, are catchy. You want to have a positive one, you want to have one worth catching. It made a big difference.
Precisely, and for all of our students out there on the business course, when you're looking at EQ versus IQ and emotional intelligence and the need to have that balance, this is what you've learned, and you're talking about is experience from your career a long time ago. The need to actually balance the emotional and personal side of your behavior, as well as the hardwired knowledge that you might bring into a position, and it's about that balance that leads to success. That's something that we can certainly foster in our students. Now, let's get into some of the practical tips for how you can grow your business network. And starting with your first tip, Paula, reach out and build relationships, a network of relationships. What do you mean here?
Well, what I mean is, it's one thing to have a network of people who are acquaintances. It's a different thing to have a network of people with whom you have a relationship, where you have a genuine pairing between the two of you. It's not actually the numbers of people, it's kind of the depth of that network. Let me give our students a case in point that I think would be very interesting and very recent. This was not necessarily for me, but it was about my network and how my network helped one of my nieces who just graduated from her undergraduate program in sports management. She is moving to a new city. I picked up the phone and I called a colleague, not a dear friend, but a colleague in whom I had worked with for a long time, and I asked just for one thing. My niece is moving to your city. She knows no one. Would you be so kind to have coffee with her so that she would know someone in the area? And by the way, you keep an eye on her and tell me if she's in trouble in any way, right? That's what I was looking for as an aunt. But, and I didn't ask for anything other than that. He said, yes, absolutely. But we had worked together for a long time, had built a deep relationship. Sure enough, that coffee led to the fact that he had relationships in her industry that I didn't know about. And that ended up with her having, in the next 2 weeks, 2 interviews with with 2 of the largest sports teams in Chicago. Something she would not if the depth of the relationship I had not been extended to her.
So I mean that just goes to show really that you never should assume what you can get from a contact. And as you said, if you stay open and positive when you meet people in relationships and you store and keep your contacts, and you never really know when you could actually tap in to that network. Now your second point, Paula, is to get a full view. What do you mean by getting a full view?
Well, I find that most people are very expert in a particular area. And when you're expert in a particular area, and I work with a lot of doctoral students. You get expert in a very finely pointed area. That's great, but then you get tunnel vision. And the fact is, business and any profession nowadays doesn't work on tunnel vision. It works from having a full view. And if you see the situation or the opportunity only from this very narrow point of view, you're not going to have the right solutions for problems within your organization. So I think knowing others, the network that you have, and this is what I mean by knowing people, giving you, informing, what you know. When you see your organization or your industry or an industry you're interested in from all different points of view, you are in a better place to take advantage of the opportunities and to add value.
Of course, and perspective and contrast is everything, and what you take from that perspective can actually be super valuable. Now your third point here, and your third tip is take the initiative and make a plan. What kind of plan can we make to ensure that we network better?
Well, I think the old adage was that plan your work and work your plan. I think this is very true with networking. I think sometimes people think networking is kind of this informal bump in situation, and it's only about getting that first job or getting that next job, but it's not. It's about informing your entire career path, and to do that you have to be just as planful as you were about getting your degree. Who are the kinds of people that you want to meet? Why do you want to meet them? And really, again, I've always found if you not only make a plan but you write it down, have some specific goals for yourself each year, and go after that, the people who write their plan down and work it, even with networking, will end up meeting the folks that will be most interesting to them. By the way, even if you get nothing from it but understanding, boy, has that been beneficial.
Of course, and what you're talking about is turning smoke into crystal, and once crystallize our thoughts and write them down, and this goes for all of you students out there, you'll find that it's easy to actually manifest your dreams, your goals and objectives once you have them written down, because you'll refer back to them and they're imprinted on your memory. When we study for exams, for example, we look at cards, we write things down, and that's how we remember them and stick to them. And Paula, you're quite right there. If you write a plan and write it down, you'll find that you can work towards your goals. Now, your fourth tip is do your homework. It's very, very important. What type of homework should we be doing, Paula?
Well, I think in an organization, I've always found this very interesting. People will get off the elevator and go to the right, because that's where their cubicle is. Mm-hmm. And then they wonder why they don't know enough about what's going on, or their path isn't as clear for them. So when I think about doing your homework, I think about learning as much as you can about your organization, and taking advantage of learning the full thing so that you get a good picture of what's happening, or doing your homework about your industry or learning about another industry that might have information that could be helpful for you. That allows you to form, again, back to your plan, form the kinds of questions that you want to be able to answer. And when you have done your homework, and particularly, let's say in your organization, here's what you know about your organization. Here are the people I want to meet. I want to meet the vice president of marketing. I want to meet the C-suite people. You should ask to do this. I say this in my notes. Look, leaders love to talk about what they're doing, and they love to talk about their area. All you need to do is ask nicely and persistently, and typically you're going to get an appointment. So you might want to start with a little lower level, not your CEO, and work your way up, but you want to go in there prepared with very specific questions and be able to have an articulate conversation with it. So do your homework about who's going to help you inform your understanding. Who do you need to know, and what questions you want to ask them so you can be better informed, and be authentic when you do that.
I mean, I like that idea of maybe even starting small and thinking, these are the type of people in my organization I want to meet. These are some of the type of industry leaders outside of my organization I want to meet. I start small with a plan. I do some research as part of that plan, and then I slowly go by getting more confident, meeting more and more people until I'm confident enough to meet someone quite high up.
Yeah, so Joe, just even thinking about the fact that, if you are a marketing person, I would ask the marketing people on the phone, how many times have they walked down the hall to the finance department and started to talk to the finance department to determine what's going on there, how they could help.
Not enough.
Not enough. How many times you walk to HR and finance? If we take that, it doesn't have to be at the high level. It's just about getting to understand your colleagues and what they're up against. That helps you get ready to do the next kind of thing. Make that extra.
Nice. So you might turn right as you walk out the lift, guys, but you need to kind of know what's going on the left. So that's very, very nice. Now, your fifth tip here is, join LinkedIn, improve LinkedIn. Now, just a bit of color for the audience today. We've just on Facebook, if you go to our Facebook page, University of Roehampton Online Facebook page, you'll find that our community manager has given her top tips specific to LinkedIn, and that's how to build up your LinkedIn profile, how to build towards those, that magic 500 plus connections, 99 plus endorsements, how to be a linked influencer, or just how to get on there and get set up if you're not already. Now, we have Hugo here. We have a link, and it's a link to our University of Roehampton community. Now, it'd be a great shame if you guys weren't clicking on that link and joining our community now. The whole point of our event today is to network you guys together, students and prospective students alike. So please hit on that link, join our community, and we'll get back to you with your membership in the next 24 hours. So please go and do that, and then we can also continue discussions on there, certainly towards career advancement. Now, Paula, for me, LinkedIn is everything. I mean, how important is LinkedIn?
Well, I think LinkedIn is where all the social networking is happening globally, so it's critical for you. I think you have to do the other personal networks too, but this is where it's happening. And it's more than just having a number of people that you're connecting with. I think it's very important to engage those folks in dialogue. To use the techniques I've been talking about, and to express with this group who really is enthusiastic about being networked themselves, what are your questions, what are your aspirations, can they help you with that? So I think you have to really be persistent. I know there'll be a lot of other tips that are shared with this group, but I do have to say, this group right now online with us for this webcast, I understand there's close to 800 of you. Boy, you can get over that 500 mark right now today if you all get hooked up together and think about the influence you're going to have. It'd be a shame if we don't have everyone well connected by the end of this.
Of course, this is not just networking isn't a passive activity, Paula, and this is why I've brought you here today to speak to our students. It's an active activity. It requires effort. We're talking about making plans, identifying people you want to network with. So it is an active activity. You will get out of it what you put into it. If you put nothing into it, you'll get nothing out of it, and it's as simple as that. Now, for all of you students out there who are already students, you also have access to InspireNet. InspireNet is our community for students. There are also many groups on there that you can join and connect with students as well. If you're new in the program, it's all a blur for you and you've just joined, go and join one of our communities and speak to one of our seasoned students who've been there for a while. If you're a seasoned student, pay it forward. Go into our community and help and new students. This is a way that you can make connections in your industry, in your country, or just purely by your interest or program. So please go on to InspireNet, go on to LinkedIn, and actively start networking. You know, you've come to this course, and a big part of it is not just your learnings, it's also who you meet along the way. Now, the last tip that we have, a wonderful simple tip, is be part of a professional body, and there are so many of them out there. Paula, how important is this, especially at the master's level?
I think it's critical. I don't see as a professional how you can stay up with your industry, with your profession, if you aren't part of an organization that is dedicated to that area. It helps you stay fresh. Your organization may be looking at things in a particular way. It helps you keep your head up. I would even suggest, in addition to a professional body that's associated directly with your profession or business, you should see what other organizations that are maybe related or aligned in because sometimes when you go even to a very unrelated conference, or you are with an organization by this unrelated, you find new ways of thinking about your organization. So I see this about being able to lift your head up outside of your own organization and not get too internally focused, and be sure that that external focus as well as your external network is being well cultivated. Got to do both, internal and external.
And this is also an important part of, you know, students who are looking to progress in their career with job interviews and CVs and resumes. You know, adding a professional body like the PMI if you're a project manager, the CMI if you're a normal manager, you want that on your CV. You want to show that you are keeping up with current practices in your industry and that you have a growth mindset, and that is what employers are looking for. So being part of a professional body is as Paula said, not just an option, it's something you should all be doing, and absolutely essential to your success. Now, I want to talk about networking within the office, Paula. You know, entrepreneurship in a way, or looking within and trying to make connections within your organization, like you were speaking earlier about, you know, meeting the CEO or meeting someone from finance or someone from another department. Now, we put a lot of onus in our programs on solving work-based problems. It's an absolute cornerstone of our collaborative online learning model. Now, how can students really tackle their work-based problems to their advantage, Paula?
Well, I think the one thing that really is important to me when I think about work-based programs is just that our work, if you just have the theory and you don't have the practice, then you haven't mastered anything. If you think about Bloom's taxonomy too, about how you move up that Bloom's level, which still, you know, applies to today, it comes through practice. And the best way to practice is through real life relevant experiences. So I think the most important thing is to look at the kinds of work. If you're able to bring in a work activity that is done as part of your assignment, or there's something that is brought to you by your professor, by your course around it, you want to be looking at how real that problem is, what the resolutions can be, and how you work together. Usually, I haven't found one work-based problem that doesn't require you to work with others and to get different points of view. So to me, again, I go back to this thing about wanting to have a full view. The work-based problems allow you to work with people who are attacking that issue from different points of view, and it's that collaboration that usually leads to the best outcome for the business. That also gives you a very practical activity to talk about when you're out interviewing and so forth.
I mean, what I do enjoy is that each module allows a student to do a final module project. In that module project, they can look at, you know, a work-based problem. If they're, you know, in the health field and looking at health systems, they can look at a health system problem in their hospital or wherever they work. If they're in business, they can look at a strategic organizational problem or a marketing problem, depending on what module they're in. And this really allows you to build a reputation within your organization, and it allows you to network and collaborate across different teams. If you look at a problem, identify a problem, it might not be completely in your remit, so you will need to share with people. So thank you, Paula. Yep.
Just just quickly, if you would, I will just tell you that I know most organizations are looking for people to come in around particular problems, particular issues. Efficiency. So if you're looking for work-based problems to identify, how can you be more efficient in what's going on in your organization? Prospects. How do you get people who are interested in your organization to become part of your organization, either as a customer or a student or participant? Customer ease and customer satisfaction. Issues around that are always very, very, very valuable. Quality issues are of it. So just to think about those kinds of things, and each of those areas really do require you to work on a resolution that will require this network to help you get it done.
Thank you. And I think there isn't a single person out there working who can't identify something that's not as efficient as it should be, and identify the people that can help make that more efficient. Now, when we move into these collaborative teams and we start working on projects, things have to move at a pace, and the culture has to be the right culture and climate for that collaborative work and for that networking. How can organizations then, and individuals within those organizations, Paula, foster a culture of originality and innovation, where people are comfortable to network with each other and actually develop ideas and initiatives?
Well, I think there's a very basic thing that has to be developed in every culture if you're going to be innovative, and that's trust. To be innovative, you've got to be willing to take a risk. To take a risk and know that you're not going to get, in some kind of trouble for going out on a limb. It's so much easier to continue doing the same thing you've done every day, but that is a sure way to death in most organizations. I say that very, very firmly. Because essentially what happens is things change all of the time. You have to be the group that is out there thinking about what the next iteration of your model is going to be, your business model is going to be. Because if you aren't changing, your competition's coming up from behind you, and they're going to change. The toughest thing is being able to establish an environment in which there's trust and risk-taking that allows you to do both things. Keep the current business model going, because you have to, while you're thinking about what the new thing has to be out there. Because if you don't, believe me, somebody else is going to come up behind you and do that. That balance is very tough. You have to be very comfortable. You have to create an environment in which you can have conflict and you can have lots of new ideas without judgment. And then once you get together, you need to commit together and move forward. But it all starts with trust.
That's perfect. And like you said earlier, how important it is to actually look above the parapet and look what other people are doing. We talk about first movers, second movers. Certainly within education, Laureate is a first mover, but online education especially. But how does an organization like ourselves or like any other keep with the pace when all the second movers come along in the industry? And the way we do that is by looking at what everyone's doing and having an understanding of the industry itself. So thank you very much.
Leapfrog you, right? They can leapfrog you if they're smart. So you need to be really thinking about that. And sometimes it's tough because you've made a big investment in the current status, and what you have to change that current status much more quickly and move to the future. So a critical thing to help your organization stay innovative.
Exactly. Michael Porter said you can sustain competitive advantage, but now that there seems to be no such thing, there is only transient advantage. And that means you can only have an advantage for a certain amount of time before someone will, as Paula says, leapfrog you. So you have to stay on your toes. Now, we've looked at work-based problems on the course. Students are now looking at work-based problems. They're listening to this. They're like, okay, I can identify some problems. I can actually identify some contacts with my organization. I can think of a plan. I can join this network. So, the pieces are coming together. Now, when we've got this piece of paper, when we've got to the end, and gosh, we're there at Roehampton, we're graduating in London, and nothing could be better. How do we take advantage of these newly acquired skills? And I love this comment here. Remind the person in front of you that you will graduate as a scholar, practitioner. How important is that, Paula?
I think that makes you very unique as a graduate of our programs. Many institutions talk about the knowledge. Well, the skills and the knowledge are great, but that's just a ticket to play. If you don't then, if you're not able to take that scholarship, and I don't belittle the scholarship is really critical so that you're up to speed, but how do you then take that into a practitioner role? And that's why we do this workplace focus and so forth, and work-based problems and so forth. So I think being clear about that with your potential employer or your current employer is important. Let's think about something for sales for a moment. I think if you've ever been in sales, they always say something very fundamental, which is don't talk about the features of your product. Talk about the benefits of your product. Well, you have just finished your degree or finishing your degree or a course in your degree, and you may be already applying this at work. When you talk to your potential employer or your current employer, you want to say, our focus is on becoming scholar practitioners, and let me tell you what the benefit is to you. That means coming out not just with a GPA, not just with a grade. I'm coming out with skills that allow me to apply what I've learned immediately to the needs that we have in our organization, and then give an example. I think it's really important not to forget that employers sometimes don't understand the specific benefits of your degree unless you are prepared to articulate those benefits. Don't settle for talking about the features. Talk about the benefits of being a scholar practitioner to that employer and what you are now able to bring. Be explicit. Don't assume that they understand.
I mean, amen to that. I think you need to demonstrate that you're able to build frameworks. You don't have to have every idea. You don't have to be able to execute every part of a plan, but you have to be able to go into your organization, use your knowledge and your learning to build frameworks, collaborative frameworks that help you achieve the outcomes that you want for your projects, whether they be big or small. So yes, remind the person in front of you that you will graduate as a scholar practitioner. So thank you for that. Now, that concludes our main part of the presentation, where we've gone over Paula's answers. And if you'd like to look at those tips in more detail, please download the handout and wait that you can read as well at your leisure. This is an opportunity for anyone to ask a few questions. We have a few minutes available to ask Paula a couple of questions and get her feedback on networking. And we already have quite a few that are coming in at the moment, and we will try to tackle as many of them as possible, Paula, if you will. So my first question from the floor, and these are all unedited questions from our guests today, and not too late to submit a question if you submit one now. This is very interesting, Paula, what are the ethical boundaries in networking, or are there ethical boundaries to networking?
Interesting. I think it's an interesting question. One of the things that I always worry about with networking is that sometimes it gets the reputation of being just about you, right? You and the advantage you're going to take, and that's why I'm stressing relationships and why I stress authenticity, because this is not just a game. Everyone you're talking to has their own needs and their own agenda, and I think it's about, this may sound very simplistic, it's about a community helping each other. And I really like to work in environments where the relationships are deep and the people are willing to help. Like that example I gave, I asked nothing of that colleague other than to be a friend. And in his definition of that friendship, it was to go as far as he could to help in any way he could. So I think from an ethical standpoint, when I talk about authenticity, when I talk about being genuinely interested in the other person, if it's only about you and your gain, I think you aren't handling it incorrectly. It needs to be about gaining knowledge, gaining expertise, making relationships, and helping others as much as you're expecting them to hopefully help you.
Oh, that's lovely. Now, we have a question. Just imagine if you're starting a new organization, Paula. It's scary. All your contacts in your previous organization aren't around you. We have a great question in that regard. How does one build, and thank you for this question, how does one build a network in a very new and strange environment? What are the pitfalls to avoid and the things that might help me? That's nice, lovely question.
Yeah, and it's a great question. When you're starting from scratch, I think about just an example, because I think examples are interesting. In another part of my life, I opened a Montessori preschool, and we still run I own and my sister runs a Montessori preschool. I happen to have a Montessori background. Well, we knew nothing about opening that particular type of business or the rules or anything that were going on, and had no network. We did this in a brand new state that we were in. And so what happens, and I think this is true in any business, what you have to do is to start by talking to the people who are in a similar kind of business. So we started with doing our homework, one of the tips I talked about. We went to the state and asked to talk to people about what the requirements were. We went to potential competitors and visited and saw what they were doing. We reached out to all of those people so that then we did it mostly with trying to understand the environment that we're in. That's what you would do with any business that you're in. Don't be afraid to go talk to your competitors. Don't be afraid to go talk to your regulators. And guess what? They're people. They become a network for you. They introduce you to others, and you start to move from there. So that would be my advice at start. Just reach out to those competitors, regulators, anybody who knows about your industry, and tell them what you're trying to do and ask for their advice. People love for you to ask for their advice. They like to be helpful, really.
Perfect. Now, I've studied for an MBA, just looked at, global leadership, and they look at, what does it take to be a global leader? What are the traits that are required, and all that type of stuff. And we kind of drill down to what personality suits a certain situation. And we have an interesting question that kind of looks at that. What skills do you require to be a good networker and get the best results? And I suppose what this student is really asking is there a natural networker, like we say, natural leader or natural charisma? Is there such thing as someone who's natural at networking, and can those skills be fostered, like behaviorally?
Well, I do think there are people who are more comfortable networking than others, because networking takes a little bit of putting yourself out there. If you're very much an introvert, that is a tougher thing to do, and that's why I always say have some questions, get prepared, because all of us have to do it. Some of us can be out there more easily. Some it may take a little bit of time, but I think you absolutely can learn it. And my belief really is, again, going back to being empathetic. You talked about IQ and EQ. When you are genuinely interested in the person sitting across from you, when you listen to them without your personal agenda being clearly on your face, when you're thinking about how to work with others, if you genuinely like people, if you genuinely are interested in other people, if you have a curiosity. And I remember President Clinton, one time I was in a meeting with him, and someone asked him what was the main thing that made him successful. And he said curiosity, and his willing to talk about things. So those are the kinds of things that lead you into a natural networking that isn't a show, that isn't putting anything on. It's just about your interest in others and your curiosity and your desire to keep learning. If you take your networking approach from that, I think almost any of us can do it. But there's no doubt that our extroverts sometimes have an easier time of making that first call, but sometimes they have a problem making the second and third because they forget it's all about the relationship, right?
Exactly, and empathy is important, and kind of taking a real genuine interest, as you said, in someone else means that you might have an unexpected outcome. You might learn something that you didn't go in there for, and going in there preloaded with your idea, your agenda, is very self-serving. So I think you do put a nice spin on that in terms of be actively interested in the person in front of you. Don't just go there just to make a contact, to fill out a sheet that you have.
And so just one other comment. I used to be worried when I went around the globe and worked with people around the globe. I'm very effective in my own country at understanding people and working with folks. Would I have that skill set when I went elsewhere? And do you know what I find is global? What I find is global is when you really care about people, it doesn't matter what culture you're in. When you're really interested in them and they see it, it doesn't matter. You're going to be part of that. When you're respectful, all of those things, very critical to not only creating a good network, but creating the culture that you want your organization to have in order to grow. So very basic things, sometimes very difficult to do on a regular basis.
Perfect. So we had another question. I think it links into that. Are there any traits for networking? And as Paul has just described, I think we have active listening as a key trait, empathy, and a genuine interest in the person that you're speaking with. Now, question from the floor. Maybe not a question as much as an interesting observation. Maybe you have a perspective on this. Interesting discussion. It is as if the networking trend cherishes a collectivist culture rather than an individualist culture. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair because I think if it's just an individualist that, the individualist approach is not going to get you, first of all, the contacts you need, but again, back to that authenticity. If it's only going to benefit you and it's not going to benefit the collective, you tend to have a limited, it tends to have a limited impact. So yeah, I think that's a good observation.
Thank you. And I think it's also important for us as students to kind of be a bit self-aware, self-critical, and critically reflexive. I'm certainly listening to this webinar. I've realized that myself. Contacts are really, for me, I just see contacts as a way to keep on climbing up a ladder. Now, it's clear that that's not quite a holistic way of looking at it. It's not certainly a way that I can co-create value in these relationships if I'm purely looking to leapfrog or get to the next position and just use my contacts that way. Now, obviously, that's a great benefit of contacts is they like Paula, like you said earlier with your niece, they can get you into doors and into rooms that you might not have got into without them, but certainly not if you're not looking to create value on both sides. So thank you. That I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm going to try to be a bit less selfish with my my particular networking goals, as I'm sure many people in our business program who are ambitious in that regard will also attest to. Now, how do you make an impact to network with people who are meeting for the first time? How would you do that if you had a room of new people? They're all new, so let's take graduation or a new classroom. How best to network when everyone is new?
Well, it depends on, well, let me just take it from the point of view of an individual in that situation. I think there is you can be prepared for that, right? Again, you can plan. What kinds of questions might you ask? Frankly, networking in that situation is about having a few questions that you can ask people about their background, how they ended up here. You're going to have to step out and start talking to individual people one-on-one and asking them. You're there all together in a new situation. There's some very easy questions that you begin with. What's brought you to this particular meeting, to this particular class, to this particular thing? What are you hoping to get out of this? Gee, that's what I'm hoping to. This is what I'm looking for. I think it doesn't have to be that difficult. It needs to be very simple. There's a whole group of people. If you walk in unprepared without having thought about what you might ask and how you might do that, then I think it can be overwhelming. Now, if you're in charge of that group, you can help the networking by doing the kinds of things that help build trust and kind of icebreaker type of activities. And I think if you're in charge of a group like that where everyone is new, it is well worth taking the first 45 minutes to be sure that people can talk to each other and learn a little bit about each other. One of the things I know about building trust that I talked about is that people build trust from their vulnerability. So if people are feeling vulnerable and you help them to feel less vulnerable, then you kind of move up that trust ladder. And that's what's happening in a new environment. You have to help people get past their vulnerability to a level of trust.
Exactly, and when you're in a room full of new people, there's a lot of vulnerability. I'll share one of my favorite icebreakers. How much does a polar bear weigh, Paula? Just enough to break the ice.
Everyone will get out their iPhone and start checking.
Yeah, I think you'll be hearing this now in meetings from Taiwan to Timbuktu. How much does a polar bear weigh? Just enough to break the ice. It's children friendly as well, so we got there. And my last question, Paula, is will you be my connection on LinkedIn?
I certainly will be.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, this is a lovely segue into our Recommend a Friend program that we run. 1 in 5 of our students actually is referred. Now, we've been talking about networking, so this is really time for you students and your prospective students to think about your network. Who do you have around you? Because our data shows that students that study together will succeed together. They'll get better grades, they have better pass rates, and we're very, very proud of the word of mouth that we have at the University of Hampton Online, that 1 in 6 of you are referred. In this webinar itself, 15 to 20% of people here will probably be referred by someone else. Now, think about that. Think about your network, paying it forward in your learning experience. There is some assistance that you do get financially as well that might come along with that. So speak to enrollment consultants about that, or contact us if you have another friend or colleague who's doing the program and wants to study it with you. So that is an option for you. Now, thank you very, very much to our wonderful and lovely guest for today. Thank you very much, Paula, for your time.
It's been a delight. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been wonderful, and I'm hoping to have you come back again next year when we talk about how you progress with the Laureate network and even more treats, tips and tricks for our wonderful Roehampton students.